Welcome to Season 6 of the Up To podcast. 9 years ago, Up To was formed as a live event series showcasing leaders who are as humble as they are successful. The humility piece is extremely important as we identify leaders who can inspire others. We try to focus our interviews on the non-business aspects of their lives, and in doing so, we have found there is a real thirst to explore their hearts and minds in atypical ways. Our host, as always, is the founder and creator of Up To, Adam Kaufman. And on this episode, we are joined by Alex Robinson of Juniper Square. Stick around. We'll be right back.
If you're a business owner, an executive, or a rising member of a management team, I don't have to tell you about the importance of having team members and partners you can trust. A firm that I've worked with for years and have trusted myself to refer my colleagues to is VividFront, an award-winning digital marketing, branding, and website development firm based in Cleveland, Ohio, but with clients all over America. VividFront's focus is on scaling brands digitally. They create holistic, return on investment centric strategies and solutions for middle market companies who want to grow. They do paid advertising, influencer and social media marketing, e-commerce strategies, lead generation websites. I could go on. Their expertise is expansive, and their tactful leadership team, all of whom I know, has the entrepreneurial experience to turn ideas into revenue-producing business plans. Yes, I am reading a script, but I will tell you that I sought VividFront out for this podcast because I already believed in them, seeing what they did in the marketplace. So if you're seeking a partner to take your business to the next level, or if you're looking for an opportunity to work for a top agency with an amazing culture, truly an amazing culture, check out their website at vividfront.com or send me a note and I'll introduce you to my friends who run the company there. VividFront, great organization. Our guest today is the co-founder and CEO of Juniper Square, a venture-backed software company based in San Francisco that's transforming how private equity and real estate investment firms manage their partnerships and their investor relationships. No longer a startup, Juniper Square has raised more than $200 million in venture capital. Wow. And with several hundred employees and tens of thousands of funds on their platform, the company operates somewhere between a soonicorn and a unicorn status, depending on how you look at things. In spite of his relative youth, our impressive guest has built a successful career rooted in technology as a repeat entrepreneur and earlier on as a Microsoft team member. Prior to founding his current company in 2013, he was a founding executive at New Energy Risk, acquired by XL Capital, and he also founded Green Door Inc. Our guest is, as usual, so much smarter than your host, for he holds an MBA from Stanford University's Graduate School of Business and was Phi Beta Kappa as a University of Washington undergrad. I've been told that his leadership style is hands-on and practical. We'll get into that. He's known for rolling up his sleeves and working across different functions within the company, often leading executive offsites and fostering a culture of collaboration and innovation. Having first met this dynamic leader more than 10 years ago, I've watched his rise with much admiration, and I've been hoping to have him in this conversation for a long time on the show. And while we couldn't get our schedules aligned for a studio visit, we're thrilled to have him on the show today, recording live from the West Coast. Alex Robinson, welcome to the Up To podcast.
Thank you, Adam. I'm happy to be here.
What have you been up to?
I've been spending a lot of time on AI. That's been a big...
I've heard of that, AI.
Yeah, there's something going on in the world called AI. That's been a big focus of mine at work, and I've got 3 young kids. They keep me busy when I'm not at work, and then I've got meditation and kind of spirituality practice that's really important to me as well. So those are then my 3, that and trying to stay healthy are basically the things that I do.
When do you do the meditation? Is it in the morning to begin your day? Is it multiple times, or when does that occur?
It's what I try to do is I try to take what I've learned. I've done a number of extended retreats now, where I'll go on a silent retreat for the longest one I've done is 10 days. I've got another one coming this summer. That'll be my 5th. And so that's sort of an opportunity to build the muscle of meditation, and then I try to practice it all the time. So I have less of a seated practice, like 10 minutes I'm on a mat type of concept, and more I try to take what I've learned doing a lot of extended meditation on silent retreats and then bring it into how I work, how I lead, how I parent. And I still do meditate, but I don't have a formal, like I wake up at 6 a.m. and I sit on the mat for 10 minutes type of practice.
Well, I know transcendental meditation got really big on Wall Street a while back. Might have even been before COVID, if not during. I've gone on a couple of silent retreats. Mine were faith-based. But I didn't know this about you. I love that you're doing this. What do you think it does for you? What does the silent retreat do for you?
It's been pretty profound for me. I went through a divorce. I went through an unexpected divorce, and that kind of created the space for me I'd always been interested in meditation, and I had a 1 day long meditation experience back in the mid 2000s when I was at business school. And it was a profound experience, but I never could find my way back to it. I had kids, I started a company, but I always had this lingering thought in my mind that there was something interesting to be found in meditation. And I dived into my first retreat, really having no prior practice whatsoever. Just, went on retreat to kind of learn how to meditate. And I had a lot of health issues that were very present for me. And so the biggest thing I think I've gotten out of meditation, there's some, I think, kind of profound insights that you learn once you just sort of sit and start paying attention to your moment to moment experience, which is hard to do when you're busy at work or dealing with the next fire to put out,
for sure,
or whatever.
Phone in your
There's
hand.
things you learn about just the nature of reality, of what it's like to be human. There's all of those sort of profound insights. But the biggest kind of practical difference for me has just been, I've been able to get myself on a path of healing some chronic neurodegenerative issues that I've had all of my life. So that's been a really profound health transformation for me that started with just going on silent retreat, and really for the first time in my life, taking a beat, taking a pause, taking a moment away from being a dad, being a CEO, being a student striving to get into Stanford, whatever the case may be. And that was the door that kind of unlocked this path for me.
I love that. I didn't know this about you. We all have this treadmill in business that begins at 0 every month, and it's just go, go, go. And I had a mentor down in Louisiana years ago who was encouraging me to go on a retreat with him. This happened to be called the Manresa Retreat. It was a Jesuit retreat. And I was, I'm so important, Alex. I'm too busy. I don't have time for this. So for a couple of years, I declined, and he finally convinced me to go. And at my table, we were organized by tables of 15. And at my table was the owner of the New Orleans Saints and the editor of the Times-Picayune, the big newspaper down in New Orleans. And I thought, if these guys can shut it down for 5 days, put the phone down, not talk to anybody, little old me, I could do it too. And I cannot verbalize how powerful it was for me. Just the walking, the prayer time, the kind of mental journey that you go on, guided or unguided. I'm so glad you do this. Most people don't do a silent retreat, so really, really cool that you see the benefits of it, and it sounds like you're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I try to. It is obviously hard as a father of 3 young kids and as a CEO. The demands of the job are real. It's not like the workload that people talk about is like a fictional thing. There is just a volume of work, a physics to it that you have to deal with. So if I had my druthers, I'd go on a silent retreat a quarter. That would be amazing. I'd love to do a 3-month silent retreat, but that's not practical given the constraints of my life and my other priorities. And so I think if I do, 1 week-long retreat a year,
that's a good goal.
That's a good goal. So my last one was September of 24. My next one will be in August of this year. So
good. So you already have the dates protected. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that busy life, if we could, for a minute, if that's okay. So, what is Juniper Square? for our listeners who aren't in real estate or other types of private investing. What is Juniper Square?
Yeah, so we are a technology and services company that helps private markets, GPs, so think venture capitalists, private equity managers, real estate managers, private credit, crypto, pretty much all asset classes. What these managers have in common is they go and they raise outside capital from LPs to go invest it and create a return for their investors. And we provide software and we provide services that help with all of the stuff that's not the investing. The operations of the funds, the administration of the funds, the legal and the compliance and the reporting and the accounting and the treasury and everything that is kind of the operational heavy lifting of being a private markets GP. We take care of, and our special sauce, what makes us unique is we are a tech company. We started out, I'm a technology founder, my co-founders are technologists. And so we bring a sort of technology mindset and a technology toolkit to what has traditionally been a very human capital focused services industry in fund administration. And so it's our ability to bring together both really great technology and tools, things like an investor portal, data room, subscriptions, a CRM for investor relationships and fundraising, really powerful reporting technology, and then marry that with really great service on the fund administration side. That's what makes us unique. We have been in business now for coming on 11 years and about 750 employees. We do business here in the US, in Europe, in Luxembourg, in India, where we've got a big staff presence. And we serve about 2,500 GPs who are collectively
is like
managing.
a general partner of a fund or the leader of a real estate investment company. I'm being general here. Just
so the
people
terminology
understand who your customers are.
That's right. So a GP is just a general partner is what it stands for. And that's distinguished from the limited partner or the LP.
Who use
another word to describe the LP is the investor.
Yeah.
So the LP, the investor, provides the majority of the capital into a fund, and then the fund manager, who's our customer, goes and invests that money in some strategy. Maybe they're going to build a building. Maybe they're going to buy, a share in a company like Juniper Square. Maybe they're going to invest in crypto assets. But at the core, they're trying to earn a good risk-adjusted return, and then they keep a share of that and return most of what they make to the LP. And so that general partner, the investment firm, that's our customer. Gotcha.
I remember early on when I first met you, full disclosure, when our fund got involved in your idea early on, living in Cleveland, there's a lot of real estate investment companies, and early on, most hadn't heard of Juniper Square, nor should have they. You were brand new. But now I can tell you that I think every single one of them uses Juniper Square. I hear about it all the time, and I whenever I meet a new principal, a new sponsor, I'll ask him, hoping to recommend, and he's like, "Oh, we already use Juniper Square," and they name their guy, their customer service guy. So I think you still have some of the world to tackle, but I think you've monopolized the Cleveland investment community.
Well, good. We should give you a referral code you can hand out to the Cleveland community, to anyone who's left. But that's really great to hear. Thanks for sharing that.
And believe it or not, a group of us were in Lebanon a couple years ago in the Middle East, and one of my travel mates, an investor, had his Juniper Square shirt on in northern Lebanon. So I know you just had a big event in India. I saw that on LinkedIn, but Juniper Square is everywhere now.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, we always tried to focus on getting good, high quality swag. Quality over quantity was the mantra. Something you'd actually want to keep. So I guess that's a validation of the strategy.
Did you always know you wanted to be your own boss and be an entrepreneur? I know you worked for a behemoth, Microsoft, early on, but then you got into various stages of helping or founding after that. Talk a little bit about your early years and if you ever discovered this interest of yours or it kind of happened accidentally. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I always made my own way, and I was very entrepreneurial before I knew the word entrepreneur. I grew up in a small town in a medical community. So my father was a dentist, my mother was a nurse, my grandfather was a surgeon, my grandmother was a nurse, my uncle
Hmm.
was a hospital administrator.
Wow.
Everybody in my parents' social circle were some form of doctor, or similar. And so uh, what I knew growing up was medicine, and all the different fields within medicine. And to me,
Hmm.
anything outside of medicine was just sort of business. It didn't really have much detail beyond business.
There's
And
medicine, and then there's everything else.
basically, yeah, it was
Hmm.
sort of very kind of like steeped in the world of medicine, and very poorly informed on anything outside of it. But growing up, I had my own, from the youngest age, I had my own, lawn mowing business of mowing
Hmm.
neighbors' yards to earn money. I was always very interested in earning money, and kind of really, I think the freedom and independence that came from having my own money is what really it was about for me. And I graduated to having a painting business. And so I always was very entrepreneurial, to use that word. I just didn't know to use that label to
Right.
describe it growing up.
It's a more
And
recently trendy word.
yeah, and I think that uh, I just didn't know that you could go start a company. I didn't know that was something that people did. I didn't know much about technology. I wasn't exposed to it. Um, and so I got a job at Microsoft coming out of college, because I felt like that's what I should do. That's what, you don't mow lawns and paint houses once you've gone and gotten a college degree. Um, and so it was sort of a default choice. Uh, and honestly, I graduated into the first tech recession, and that was the only job that was available to me. So it's not even like I made some
Hmm.
deliberate choice among 10 really great opportunities. I felt really lucky just to have a job. And most of the people I knew who graduated in that sort of 2001 time period did not have jobs. They were moving home
Hmm.
with their parents, and it was a tough time. And so the decision to work at Microsoft really came from, I had an interest in technology by that point. But it was the honest truth is, it was a job, and it was available to me. And I had a really great
Hmm.
run at Microsoft. I was a product manager for the OneNote digital note taking application. I worked on the strategy team. I learned a lot about how you price and package software, how you build great software, how you work with users to figure out what they need, how you
Hmm.
plan and manage big complex projects. But at some point along the way, I thought, man, if I don't leave here soon, I'm going to be a Microsoft lifer, and that was never my intention. And
Hmm.
so business school for me, I went to Stanford Business School. It was a way of kind of hitting the escape button, or hitting the eject button out of Microsoft, not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do next. But I did write my essays to Stanford. They always ask you, why do you want to go to business school? And I said, I want to start a company, and I want it to be in clean tech. And
Hmm.
I really thought about it. That was a genuine answer. And so that's what I focused on, and that's what I did during my time at Stanford.
So you went to school full time, fully leaving the work world. You went back to school, not like night school or part time. So was that a huge
Yeah, I quit my,
decision to like?
yeah.
Can you talk about like how you got up the courage to like say goodbye to Microsoft or tell your parents, not only am I not in medicine, but I want to go to business school? Like, what was like the emotional process to get to that, big moment?
I I've always had this drive to sort of see over the horizon, to kind of see what's next, to turn the next page. And so when I was really young, that expressed itself as wanting to, study abroad and do an exchange program. I lived in Spain
Hmm.
when I was in high school. Um, and so for me, the idea that I'm from Seattle, the Seattle area, the exurbs of Seattle originally. So the idea that I would just spend my life working for one company in the region that I grew up in didn't sit well with me. I wanted to explore more of the world. I wanted to see more of what was out there. And so in that sense, it didn't feel risky. It just felt like the next thing to do, following my intuition of what I wanted to do in my life. And I've never been somebody that's really worked backward from some sort of plan. Like I never managed my career that way. It was always just what's the next thing in front of me that seems interesting, that seems challenging, where I could learn. And it honestly, truthfully too, I mean, if I was really fortunate to get into a school like Stanford, other than the cost, which was really significant. I mean, I graduated from business school with a lot of student debt, and that was not a trivial thing. But it's not that hard to say yes to going to a great school like Stanford, because it's not really that big of a risk. And so for me, I went down there. I did one of these, arrive at Stanford on a 75-degree sunny day when it was 45 and raining up in Seattle, and it was not a difficult decision. I was like, okay, this is
Right.
I definitely want to come to this place. And I met a lot of really, really great people, and I loved the intellectual energy of it. I loved the creativity and sort of entrepreneurial energy of Stanford and how connected it was to the sort of Silicon Valley capital ecosystem and all the companies that had some sort of connection.
So vibrant.
Like Google. Yeah, I thought, oh wow, okay, this is a place I really want to be. I didn't know what was going to come from it. I knew I was interested in doing something in clean tech and trying to make my own way. But it seemed like Stanford was going to be a great place to do it. So honestly, it wasn't a difficult decision. It wasn't like a hard conversation. I qualified for student loans and, took out some debt and drove my way down to Stanford.
Well, it sounds like it's a win-win for everyone who probably gave you the loan. You've paid them back and invested in you, and the school taught you well, and now you've employing 750 people as have established. So you mentioned you like to always kind of look out over, see what the horizon looks like. And early on, you said you're focusing a little bit on AI. So why don't we apply the horizon metaphor to your AI pivot or lean into, and because you've existed for many years in technology, but talk about the current and future AI aspects of Juniper Square, or maybe new opportunities.
For us, it's a little funny because our whole thesis in entering this business 10 plus years ago was that there was a tremendous amount of kind of inefficiency and waste and missed opportunity as a result of that waste in the kind of capital markets ecosystem, that if you could make the private markets function better, if you could make them efficient and transparent, like the public markets already were at that point in time, you would unlock incredible value. And we believed that the primary way that you would do that would be by investing in technology, right? Sort of the core insight for starting Juniper Square was the difference in experience I had between buying and selling a share of stock in a public company like Coca-Cola. You can do that whole process online. You click a few buttons. It's all very easy. And then the experience of investing in a private fund back in 2013, which was literally physical paper,
very
coming
analog.
Back and forth on a FedEx truck from my house, very analog. And it just seemed clear as day to me that the private markets were going to come to look like the public markets, and that the equivalent level of technology investment that the public markets had seen was going to need to come to the private markets. And if the market system became sort of intermediated by technology, that would ultimately lower the cost of trading. It would enable things like liquidity. It would enable broader access for GPs to access more in different types of capital. We're seeing that today with GPs pushing into the retail channel, for example. And importantly, it would make it possible for more investors, more people like those I grew up with, doctors and folks who don't normally have direct investment opportunities into private, into venture capital funds or really great real estate investors, private equity investors, broaden access so that more investors could participate in owning private markets. So that was always the genesis of the company. And we always foundationally believed in the power of software, really well built and well designed, sort of for the purpose to have this tremendous transformational potential on all these very human workflows. So we started on that project back in 2014. We made a lot of early decisions like, having all of our customers, multi-tenant on a, cloud native SaaS system at that point in time, on having a single structured data model that spanned the entirety of the industry, from crypto funds to real estate funds to venture capital funds, so that we could sort of tie everything back to a common structure. And those decisions, we knew we paid sort of a tax at the time. It made it a little slower, a little less efficient, but we knew we were sort of building toward this future outcome of technology-driven efficiency that we wanted to see happen in the world. And so in many ways, what AI...
You say paying a tax, you mean
yeah.
like it's just investing the dollars to build the software? That's the tax, so to speak, that you were paying at the time? I'm just following.
No, the tax is like what's the easy way to describe this? The tax is if every customer comes to you with a set of spreadsheets that represent, and they say, hey, this is how we manage our fund. And it's all these different spreadsheets, all these different columns and rows in the spreadsheets. And then the next customer comes to you and they have their spreadsheets, but they don't match. They're different columns, different rows, different headers, because they're different firms. The easiest thing you can do at the time, the cheapest, fastest thing, is just to set up your system so that every customer kind of has their own unique way of reporting, right? The hard thing to do is to set your system up so that the customers can experience a difference in how they think they're reporting, but you're tying all that data back to a common substrate, a common data model, so to speak. That
Gotcha.
is much harder. It takes a lot longer. The software code is more complicated. The work that you do around data migration and customer onboarding takes longer. It's more expensive. So that's the tax that you pay for some future benefit of efficiency for the market system.
Scale.
And where that comes in, and where that comes in for AI is a lot of the decisions that we made early on, whether decisions like that around data model and how we set up the guts of our software system, or the decision 4 or 5 years ago to enter the fund administration business, where we're now a very well-regarded, scaled fund administrator. We administer thousands of entities globally, and nine-figure revenue scale business that we've grown from scratch over a handful of years. And so we have the ability to provide full service solutions to the customer. That's a blend of technology and humans to deliver the ultimate thing the customer wants, which is a fund administered. So we have all these pieces in place, this deep understanding of the industry. We've got customer trust at scale. As I said, we've got 2,500 customers. We have all of these workflows that we have automated on our software system. And then we have this full service solution writing on top of the workflows. And so we're in this really fortunate position to be able to now take this incredible new technology in generative AI and apply it over the top of what we've built. And we think it will have very transformative potential both in our business and for our customers. And so it's a huge bet for the company. It's our top priority. We're seeing, one of the big places that AI is having an early impact is on the job of software engineering. And, we're a staff of software engineers, close to a couple hundred software engineers. So if all of the software engineers become 2, 3, 4, 5 times, 10 times more productive, you can build 10 times as much stuff. And so, not everywhere, not every engineer, not every scenario, but in enough places, we're now seeing some of these impacts of jobs that previously might have taken 2 weeks to complete for one person to complete, now being done in 20 minutes.
I'm glad you said it this way, because I feel like the negative potential of AI reducing human work gets more attention than what you just said. When you have a good idea and something's going well and it can be done efficiently and faster, you invest in it to do more of it, not like cut out the human to do less of it. My daughter is a software engineer for MasterCard, and she talks about how much more work she can get done faster, not about how much less she has to work now. They're just loading her up. The Alex there, so to speak, is just loading her up with more stuff because they can do more now, more capabilities with the AI tools they use. So I'm glad you emphasize that. I grimace. Certainly there will be some job displacement, but I think the big companies like yours are going to invest more in the growth potential that AI offers.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and it can be both true that we have a lot of uh, displacement and dislocation that's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of jobs. I was just at LA last weekend with my daughters, and we took a Waymo around Hollywood, and had a wonderful experience. And it was the girl's first self-driving car
Mm-hmm.
experience. It was really fun, but
Mm-hmm.
it's hard not to get in a Waymo. And now in San Francisco, Waymo has overtaken Lyft in terms of ridership, and it's on a very
Mm-hmm.
steep trajectory coming for Uber. And it's very obvious that the future is going to be, Waymo, Tesla, sort of, cars that drive themselves, robo taxis that are available
Mm-hmm.
24/7. So it's hard not to look at that and say, okay, the prospects for being an Uber driver over the course of the next, 5 years probably are not great,
Yes.
right? So there
Truck
are
drivers.
pockets. There, truck drivers, same story. So there are pockets where you're going to see job destruction for sure, but that doesn't mean that in the aggregate of the economy, we're not going to see other pockets where massive new work gets
Yes.
created.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's this economic theory called Jevons paradox, which is as the price of something comes down, demand for it tends to increase. And I think we've been living in a world that has been massively constrained by software engineering, right? There's
Mm.
far more demand for technology to do stuff for us in the world than
Mm-hmm.
the supply of software engineers, a relatively scarce resource, has been able to meet. And so for me, when I see it, certainly inside of our company, I don't think like, the amount of work we're going to do is fixed. And therefore, if I have 150 software engineers
Right.
and they all become 10 times more productive, well, now I only need 15 engineers and I'm going to save 90% of the cost or whatever. You think, wow, what can 150 software
Exactly.
engineers
What
do
can I do with
that are
that?
10?
Right.
Yeah, now I've got a team of 1,500. What can
Mm-hmm.
I do with a team of
Yeah.
1,500? And I think that is how it will play out, at every company. There's just so much latent work, so much latent opportunity that AI will unlock. Now, I think the trick is going to be, and it sounds like the case of your daughter at MasterCard, she's able to demonstrate this skill, but the trick will be, can people relearn what they've learned to do in their jobs,
Hmm.
and sort of rethink that with AI tools at their disposal? Can they evolve? Can they become workers who manage agents versus workers who do work? And it'll be easier for some to make that transition, and it'll be harder for the others. And
Right.
employees who are having a hard time transitioning to being AI, and we see it inside of our company, and we've got some employees that are sort of fully AI first at this point in time, and we have others that are having a harder time making that transition to
Mm.
learning new things. And that's this other variable to the dislocation that we'll see of just how quickly can the workforce retool and relearn around a new technology. So I
How?
don't want to downplay the risk and the dislocation here, because I do think it'll be pretty significant, but I do think overall the expansion in economic output that's possible is really exciting.
I think it's exciting too. How do you, as a leader now of such a sizable enterprise, how do you decide what to jump into versus what to not jump into? And a little context, I have a peer group of successful CEOs that we experience, share, and get together about once a month. And we're talking about innovation and how do you bring innovation into your business or in your own personal growth. And it was the week that Google announced its new AI tools. And for years, we've all gone to the blank Google search screen, all white, Google letters, type in something, get a bunch of citations. And for 2 years or so now, Google has been criticized for adopting slowly the new innovation of AI. And they finally did it. They announced their Gemini suite 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. How do you decide to either like cannibalize something that's going well inside your business, or maybe to take a baby step first. You know, Warren Buffett talks about allocating resources. Like, how do you decide how to allocate various resources or brain power into the different opportunities in front of you? Maybe that was a long context, but I hope it was clear.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. And I mean, it is, we try to put as much, science to it as possible, but at the end of the day, there is a lot of intuition and feel and art to it. Is the
Gut.
honest
So that's
answer.
human. That's not AI. You trust your gut.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, look, I think it starts with the customer. It has to start with the customer, because the company doesn't exist unless it's got customer problems that it's solving. And so we try to start there of, what does the customer need? What are they trying to do? And to do this really well as an innovation organization, it's really about asking really great questions of the customer, having really great empathy for the customer, like really listening to them, really trying to understand what they're trying to do. And in our case, it's business software. We can really get to know our customers very deeply. What is it to be a commercial real estate firm? What is it to be a private equity manager? What is it to be a venture capitalist? What's everything that has to happen, to make that business successful and to be an expert on it. So it does start with knowing your customer, being an expert on your customer, and then having these traits of empathy and curiosity and really listening to what your customers is telling you. Everything has to start there, because that's where the opportunity expresses itself. Now, in the case of AI, it's a little different, because we started investing heavily in AI long before our customers were asking for it. Right? Because if you wait until your customer's asking you for something, this is where the art of it comes in. So part of your job, if you're leading a technology company, is to be looking at the technology landscape and understanding what's happening. And when you see a breakthrough arrive like AI, you've got an imperative to respond to that new technology platform and say, now what can this new technology do for my customers? And to lead the customer a bit in that. And if you're always listening to the customer, waiting for them, we're just right at this point, starting to hear customers say, hey, what are you doing with AI in fund administration? Or what are you guys doing in AI? And if we were at this point, just starting to think about AI as an organization, right? 750 people, so it takes time to steer it. Yeah. We'd be way, way behind. So there is this
kind of
art
Steve Jobsy. It's kind of like how Steve Jobs used to create a product, purportedly knowing that people would love it. People weren't asking for iTunes, but he just knew to put a bunch of music into that tiny little device would be something the customers want. That apparently was his intuition. And so you're now applying your own hunch, or your executive team's hunches, to AI development, AI investment before the demands of the customer. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I think in this case it's a pretty easy call, because the saying goes, I don't know if it was attributed to Jobs, but it's often loosely attributed to him. The saying is that if I ask my customers, or maybe it was Henry Ford, I don't know. If I asked my customers what they wanted, I think it might have been Henry Ford. If I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. Right. This is the saying. Yeah. If your customers are all in horse and buggy land, they're not going to tell you they want a Model T.
And that's why you're a leader, because you're thinking ahead. You're beyond the horizon. You're thinking out. You're looking out.
Yeah, I think that is the job of a leader, especially if your job is to build and deliver technology solutions to your customers. And I think the really great organizations are those that have the ability to see these long-term trends, and then to sustain long-term investments around these trends, to position the company over multiple years to be in the right spot. And so it is more art than science, but there is an element of capital allocation to it too, which is we try to be ROI driven. And the crazy thing about AI is, if all of a sudden, if everything you can invest in has just become 10x more productive, you want to invest a lot more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're upping our investment as a result of what we're seeing.
Hit the
Literally,
accelerator. That's awesome.
Reducing it. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do though when you're faced with a challenge? I call them a curve in the road. We often navigate these inevitable curves in the road, whether they're in business or in personal lives. I know I have. Who do you lean on? Do you have like a core executive team? Do you have a personal board of advisors? Is it your yoga instructor? Like, I'm always interested in hearing how accomplished people grow or, face challenges.
What has been most powerful for me, it's been less sort of peer support. I have done some experiments with that. But what's been most impactful for me is sort of changing the frame of mind from wanting a road that doesn't have curves in it, that doesn't have bumps in it. And therefore, every time you hit a curve or every time you hit a bump, you have this expectation that it shouldn't be there. And a frustration that, like, why isn't the road straight, or why isn't it just smooth? Like, why am I dealing with this bump in the road today? My life would be so much better if I had no bumps in my road.
Right.
And having this attachment to the idea that it should be different, and instead changing my mindset, which is how I used to operate, for sure. I used to operate with this idea that I was going to get through all of the work, that we got through this rough patch, there would be a smooth patch ahead, right? And then inevitably there's not. You're through this rough patch and you're just to a different rough patch.
Right.
And instead a lot of this has come from my meditation practice. I've learned to just reposition the mind state, or the frame of mind, to the road is always curvy. It always has bumps in it. And these are just today's bumps. And these are just today's curves. And so that has been the thing that has been the most transformative for me, because then you don't have to go lean on somebody because you're in such a hard time, because you're trying to, it's like, oh, this is just what it is today, and tomorrow will be a different set of things, and that's fine. And it's just all about how you can relate to the challenges of the day. And if you see it as a process, and if you see it as a natural course of things, that building a business is hard and there's challenges and there's bumps in the road, then all of a sudden that's very liberating. It's very freeing.
I'm grateful that Calfee, Halter, and Griswold has once again agreed to partner with us. With offices in Ohio and Washington, D.C., this full-service national law firm focuses on all aspects of business and the law, including corporate and finance, intellectual property, and government relations. Let me be clear. I actually approach companies with whom I would like to partner. We just don't accept marketing dollars from anyone. I have been referring my CEO and entrepreneur friends to Calfee for years. I really believe in the firm. One of their notable practice areas is in mergers and acquisitions. And recently, for instance, I introduced a successful entrepreneur in the Midwest to Calfee when he told me that a European-based conglomerate wanted to buy his business. Calfee works with large corporations as well as privately held companies throughout the U.S. and Canada, and in Europe and Asia too. So whether it's selling your own business or the more routine needs of creating your first will or anything in between, this firm can really do it all in terms of legal needs. Once again, the firm is Calfee, Halter, and Griswold, and you can find them at calfee.com or on the Up2 Foundation website.
You don't expect it to be different.
Right. If you know that these curves are coming, it reminds me, in my first vocation out of college, I worked in Washington, and they trained me on public speaking and debating. So I did a lot of debating, and they spent a year training me on debating. And there's this Edmund Burke philosophy of understanding your opponent's strongest arguments and then expecting that and being prepared for it during the moment when you're debating on stage or what have you, on the radio in those days. And that's kind of like this expecting the curves in the road to occur that you're talking about, because when the opponent didn't say the strong point that I was expecting, I was almost disappointed. It was so much easier to navigate that moment because the curve didn't come, so to speak. Their good point didn't have to be countered, but I was almost disappointed because you're expecting it. So for you, it's easier knowing that it's not going to be a straight road to that horizon that you keep talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's been the most powerful thing for me. That reframing of expectation.
Well, I think you're sharing on, I think, probably an unintentional to you aspect of your own humility. The theme of this podcast is leaders who are as humble as they are successful. And there are plenty of accomplished startup founders from Stanford who are not humble and who are not meek and who do not talk about it starts with the customer, as you did today. Your humility really comes out in some of these topics. How do you remain humble in spite of your success? And maybe you're going to say, oh, it's just natural, it's who I am. But are you aware of like how much this has grown, this Juniper Square, and how much people are relying on you and expectations of going public or building a $100 million business? I mean, how do you remain? I met you more than 10 years ago. You're still like that person, other than the very enviable long hair you now have. How do you remain your authentic self? Maybe somebody keeps you in check?
Going through a divorce will definitely keep you in check. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of it. I mean, in seriousness, though, I certainly feel the weight of growing responsibility. I can feel responsible for just more now than 10 years ago, right? Thousands of customers rely on us, millions of positions, trillions of dollars in capital. We have to invest heavily in security and take security really seriously, for example. And so I think a lot about all of the different exposure that we have there. We can have a whole separate conversation on the risk vectors that AI opens up on that front. So I feel a growing sense of responsibility as the company becomes more successful. I definitely feel that, but I don't feel that I'm different as a person at all.
That's what I'm saying.
So
You
all
don't
the same
seem
insecurities.
different.
Yeah. All the same insecurities that I had, going back to whatever, 7th grade or, growing up, I still carry those with me, whether I'm responsible for a company with trillions of dollars in capital on our platform or, hundreds of billions of dollars. And so I don't, the genuine answer is I don't feel like I have to work that much to counteract some force that's driving me to be different, because there really hasn't been that much of a force in that direction. Like most of the forces that I deal with are really like constraints and challenges I have relating to time, or as sort of my biggest challenge. And being the father I want to be, and being the leader I want to be to the company, attending to my own health and those needs, and just figuring out how to bring harmony and balance to all of that. And it's less about ego in there, and it's more just like practical problems to solve.
See, that's how you're wired, and that's beautiful. That's your heart. That's your God-given character traits. But a lot of people in your situation wouldn't look at it that way. So that's why I just want to commend you and encourage you, because as the company does grow, you will have these outside influences naturally pulling you in different directions. But I've just always been impressed how, from afar, I've seen you continuing to be who you are when I first met you. And even, if we just interact once or twice a year in a LinkedIn note or a text or something, it's noticeable. And I wonder if you ever think about who watches you. I mean, you're young, but you're also probably a role model for others already. Do you ever think about the image of yourself, not image in the negative way, but which young team members are watching you, or maybe others in the Silicon Valley ecosystem who are looking up to you? Do you ever give that any thought?
I have a wonderful leadership coach that I've worked with for I don't know, six plus years now. And he's helped me to see, because of some of the other character traits that we talked about, I tend to have a pretty self-effacing personality. And in fact, I really avoided the limelight. I didn't like to be, out there in public. I've realized that, I need to do more of that, because as the company grows, that's increasingly an important part of my job. So to do my job well, I have to do more of it, even if it's not my preference. And, but the leadership coach has this great saying of saying, look, there's an aspect of leadership where you're like an avatar, and people are looking not just at what you say, but they're looking at the entire avatar. You're an avatar of your values, you're an avatar of the behavior
right,
that you want to see in the organization. So I try to remember that, and I try to help our leaders at the company remember that the full aspect of you is what people look to when they're looking for signals on, what matters around here at this company and how should I behave. And so it's everything you say, it's everything you don't say, it's your nonverbal behavior. And obviously this is moderated somewhat in Zoom. I mean, you can only see, people's shoulders and above. But as a company, we do these periodic, we're a distributed company. We work remote first, but we do these periodic gatherings. You'd mentioned India. I was there earlier this year, and once a year we do a company-wide gathering in India for a week. Get everybody all across the country together in one spot for a week. And you can really feel it there when you're in the presence of
energy.
People and you're around each other 24/7. You can feel the energy, and you could feel the responsibility of, okay, if you are the leader of an organization, people are looking at you.
For sure.
Because they're like, somebody up on stage is saying something. How's the leader reacting to this? What's the look on his face? Is he credulous? Is he skeptical? Is he, checking his phone and not paying attention? Is he exuding nervous energy? So I do try to remember that sort of aspect of leadership is so much about the full catalog of behavior that people are seeing from you, and not just some insightful thing you're saying in a meeting. It's sort of how you comport yourself.
Do you think leaders can be built or trained? I feel like leaders are either born with or not born with the character traits required to be a successful leader, successful defined in various ways. Do you think it's something that can be trained and taught? Every school teaches leadership and business development. Maybe I just have a different view. I wondered yours. There's no wrong answer, but as a significant leader, I have a feeling the lawnmower guy, you were probably the leader you are today early on.
Yeah, I mean, here we're going to kind of come back to, I suppose, some of what I feel like I've learned from my path down meditation and spirituality generally, which is, if you sit for long enough and you pay attention to your breath or whatever it is you're meditating about, one of the core insights that you get to is you realize, like, wow, I don't actually think my own thoughts. Right? Like, I don't, it feels like you think your own thoughts. Like, if I ask you, hey, what movie do you want to watch tonight, Adam? You're going to have an experience that's like, I'm going to think about this. What movie do I want to watch here? Let's say we watch Die Hard, or not Die Hard. Let's do
New
this,
Mission
whatever,
Impossible.
Steve Carell movie. And you're going to have this experience, like you're going up to this catalog in your mind, you're making a selection. It feels like you have free will. And that's what it is. That's what it feels like to all of us. But when you really look closely and you inspect it, you see that the thought just appears to you. You didn't select it. You didn't select the thought Die Hard. That just came to you. And so when you really get that insight, it can totally scramble you, because you realize, well, hold on a second here. I'm not really responsible for any of this, right? Like, I'm just sort of receiving transmissions here. And that's kind of how I think about it. And so I think that most of what we think of as free will is an illusion. And therefore, I'm pretty far into the camp of, we all have different innate capabilities. And there's an element of kind of nature versus nurture. What can you light up? What can you turn on? What can you expose? But even something like one's propensity to be able to study and take subject matter seriously, that itself is not necessarily a choice. Some of us are very disciplined and driven, and we can focus and we can concentrate, and others of us just can't do that. And so that itself is not a trait that any of us chose. So I am much more in the camp of we
You
all
agree
are
with
just
me,
sort
it
of,
sounds like.
I'm
it
much
sounds
more in
like.
your I'm much more in your camp. Yeah.
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 Okay. Well,
Yeah.
good. I just wanted to highlight that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah. No.
you reminded
I
me,
think
and
a lot of these traits.
yeah, I think we do have a little bit of free will. For instance, you chose to accept my invitation to be on today, in spite of how busy you are. So thank you for that. That was your choice, or maybe it was God's plan.
my pleasure.
So we'll wrap this up soon. It's amazing how quick an hour goes. But what you were just talking about, Bono, the U2 band leader, was just on the Joe Rogan podcast this past week. Big release.
Oh, okay.
And
cool.
he mentioned, very cool. He mentioned, Bono did, this thinker that he was exposed to named Richard Rohr. Have you heard of Richard Rohr?
Okay. No.
What you're talking about right now reminds me of Richard Rohr. So Richard Rohr is this Franciscan monk, and he does a lot of like leadership conferences for business people. And I went to it once in New Mexico. He's got this center in New Mexico, excuse me. And he said in this room of 100 business people like you in the room, more like you, not like the Franciscan monk on the microphone. He said,
Okay.
we're all here today. I decided to become a monk, so I took a vow of poverty. This is him talking. And Richard Rohr said, think of all the things that I no longer worry about, because if I truly believe in this vow of poverty, think of all the things that I'll never again have to think about and worry about. You know, what kind of car to drive, or where should I vacation, or where's the next heating bill going to get paid with what money. He challenged us in the audience. I'm not telling you to take a vow of poverty. Don't worry. We need business people in the world. But what could you let go of or release the way I released this care for money and stuff? What could you let go of? And then think of how much less worried you would be. And what you were saying just now kind of reminded me of that, like the selecting of the movies. Like, if it's really just this, whether you call it fate or God's plan or the opposite of free will, the meditative discovery that you go through, it's very liberating to not, if you realize this, and I promise I'll stop talking, but Richard Rohr said, the sooner we realize we're not doers, we're done unto, the easier life gets. And I think about that every day. We're done unto. So I don't know if you have any reactions to that, but you were kind of saying the same thing just now, and I wanted to highlight Richard Rohr. It's meant a lot to me. It helps me. I still forget sometimes, and I still feel like I can control more than I really can. I can affect more than I really can, and that can be harmful to one's well-being. But it seems like you're in a really healthy place in spite of all of the responsibilities in front of you, both at home and at work. And I commend you for that.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a probably, like 100x healthier place than I've ever been in my life,
Wow.
for sure.
Isn't that great?
And I do think a lot of it, something you said there, I would comment on, which is just what I have found in my own experience is the more that I can give up the idea of control, and the more that I can sort of lean into the idea that I'm seeking to find harmony with all of the signals and all the different inputs that I'm getting, the more effective I can be and the more effective I can operate. And similarly, the more of myself, like the more of my self-identity I have constructed around attachments to things, whatever they may be, how I'm perceived, what kind of car I drive, what club I belong to, what kind of house I live in, whatever. The smaller you can make that self, and you can construct a smaller and smaller and smaller self, so that you don't have all these attachments to those things, the more liberating that is too. And I'll just give you like a very silly but kind of practical example of this. So I'm going through a divorce, like I mentioned. I'm getting set up in my own house for my kids to live in, and so I've had to move into a house, and I'm having to furnish it from scratch. And I'm fortunate to be able to hire a designer to help me with this. And the old version of me would have had this process where I'm like, now it's this big expression of self, and I need to show people how cool my taste is and like how unique everything
Yeah.
is.
Right.
And now I don't care about any of that. I'm like, there needs to be a couch there because I need to be able to sit down. And I'm sure the choice the designer puts forward will be totally acceptable. And if I have some strong reaction to it, then I might make an edit. But otherwise, I just sort of accept the process, and it comes together so much easier. And the end difference of the result, they're both houses that are furnished. They both have couches that you sit in and whatever. It is so narrow and so small, but I've avoided this entire process of
Worry stream.
feeling
Yeah.
like I'm in control of this outcome. And so that has been a really, and so you just take that silly little example, but apply it to building software or building
Yeah.
teams or buying
The
companies
white
or whatever it
T-shirt
is.
you're wearing today. I noticed right away. You have a white
Yeah,
T-shirt on,
yeah.
and I was worried about how I should
Yeah, I'm
look
just wearing
today.
my T-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned harmony and all the things coming together in harmony. You've brought harmony to the Up To podcast today, Alex. So thank you so much
thank you, Adam.
for being with us. I can't
pleasure.
wait to see you in person. But for now, thank you for your time. Congrats on all of your success, and I'm excited to keep watching you grow in the future, both personally and professionally. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Adam. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Up To podcast. We aim to showcase super achievers who remain humble in the hope that their stories will inspire others to remain humble throughout life's journey. For feedback, guest suggestions, or any other inquiries, you can email Adam Kaufman directly at adam@up2foundation.org. That's adam@up2foundation.org. A special thanks to our longtime sponsors, Vivid Front and Calfee. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Up To wherever you get your favorite podcast. BLC Digital Strategies proudly produces the Up To podcast, located right outside the nation's capital in McLean, Virginia. Visit blcdigitalstrat.com for all of your podcasting needs. We'll see you next time.